we created a tiny game called Mind Worlds, a tiny trading card game, a year ago. And there's a theme, an idea, a question that we've been asking for kind of a long time now, which is, when you start to creating a tiny project like that, a tiny game, you will start to have one or two people that might show interest in it. And it's something that's really challenging to kind of grow these first few people into a bit of a bigger community over time. It's really hard to create this first seed of a community. And we kind of came up with a few ways in which one might be able to slowly grow a micro community like that. So the first element of that is to kind of choose a place in which people who want to play your game can find each other. So basically, when you start to creating this tiny community, there are a few goals that you want, a few things that you want people to do. It's mainly to play your game, to interact with each other, to kind of come back to this place that you created for them. And the last element would be for them to be interested in sharing your game. So basically you want them to be engaged. And so Discord is one of the best places for that, to be able to create these interactions and to nurture them. And I'm gonna go through 4 psychological elements that kind of explain what people might want out of a place like that, and elements that might make them more willing to engage with the game that you created, or more willing to interact with the people in this tiny community. So it's 4 psychological elements that are often used in video games and in a lot of other fields, but it's elements that we don't consciously think about as users or as players. And it's something that I would argue, it's something that we can use in these tiny communities, in these Discords, in order to keep people entertained and to make them want to come back to the game you created, to make them want to become more engaged. And so these 4 elements are as follows. The first one is the feeling of progression. So it's something that you see a lot in video games with achievements and similar ideas, which is that people want to feel like they're achieving something, like they're progressing. It's really this notion that as you do stuff, you kind of want a memorabilia of what you did, and a feeling that you're going forward. So that's the first kind of psychological element. The second one is the need for suspense and anticipation. So it's something that's also used in a lot of other medias, in a lot of movies, of series, of books. Is this idea that we are kind of wired to be curious. And so if something is suspenseful, if you do not know what is gonna happen next, if you have this feeling of anticipation, you're way more likely to be interested in it. You're more likely to want to engage with this element that makes you feel this suspense. The third one is random rewards. So it's something that's used a lot in video games, which is this idea that if you are going to give rewards to players, if you are going to give rewards to users, if they know exactly when and how they get rewarded, there's this psychological element that makes them feel way less interested in it, while when they receive random rewards, whether it be at random times, or whether it be that they do not know what kind of rewards they're gonna get, psychologically they're way more likely to want to continue to engage. And it's a really interesting quirk, because it's a bit hard to explain why it's happening, but my best guess is that the randomness that is added to these rewards is kind of linked to suspense and anticipation, in that you do not know what's gonna happen, and our natural curiosity makes us want to keep going to see what we are gonna get. And finally, the fourth element is natural breaks. And so natural breaks are this idea that to keep someone engaged, for you to feel engaged in in a media, in a game, you kind of have these peaks of adrenaline or these peaks of interest that build up. And so one way to keep someone engaged would be to add new content and to add new interest again and again and again and again. And it's a system that's been tried by some games in the past. And you rapidly realize that the more you do that, and the more it creates a fatigue in players. Players tend to become really exhausted by that, which is understandable. And so the best way to keep someone engaged, whether it be in a game or any other kind of media, is for them to have natural breaks. So you want people to come to this place or to play this game and to feel this kind of peak of excitement, this peak of enjoyment. And then you want them to be able to go back down and to get away from the game for a bit and to come back later. This way, it's way more sustainable. The people have a way better reaction to playing the game. And so the more you manage to have these natural breaks, these natural cuts where people would go out of this element, would go out of the game for a bit and then come back to keep on enjoying it, and the more sustainable it feels, the more people are likely to come back again and again. And so in the context of having this tiny place for your players, it kind of translates to having them come once in a while, maybe once a week, or maybe interact with people now and then, and to have some kind of breaks in between. And so you have these 4 elements: the feeling of progression, this suspense and anticipation, the random rewards, and the natural breaks. These are the 4 elements that I feel are the most important here. There's a lot of psychological elements that could be applied for wanting to keep people entertained and to make them be interested in something. But I feel like these 4 elements are probably the most important that you'd want to implement in your tiny community, especially if you're creating a project that's really small and only for a limited amount of people. These would be, in my opinion, the main elements that you'd want to focus on. And so the way we implemented it in Mindworld is that we created this currency, which is called time. And so people in the Discord acquire this currency by doing a few different things. Every time they come to interact in the Discord, they receive this currency. Every time they play, every time they teach the game to a new person, every time they create a video about the game, every time they share it, they receive some amount of this currency. And so that's the first face of the coin. And the second face of the coin is that we started to introduce some characters in our Discord. Characters that are based on the lore of the game, and characters that people can interact with. And so these characters, these wanderers, are some kind of shops, basically. They come once in a while, and people can interact with them, can use the time that they gain, the currency that they earn, in order to acquire some items, some perks, in order to get some rewards, basically. And so this is basically the one thing we are working towards, these characters and this currency, in order to keep people, or to make people more engaged with our tiny game. And so if we look at these 4 psychological elements, this system that we implemented, these characters, kind of touch on each single one of them. So the first one, the feeling of progression. So as people play games, as they talk, as they interact, they kind of manage to have this feeling of progression because they slowly acquire more and more currency. So they acquire more and more time that allows us to do stuff in the Discord. So you have this first element that's here, this feeling of progression. Like the more you interact, the more you do stuff, and the more rewards you get. Secondly, these characters are not here all the time. They are some kind of wanderers, meaning that they come to the Discord server randomly. And so you have this whole element of suspense and anticipation. So for the moment we only have one character, but we have a few new ones that are coming to the server with specific ways to unlock them. And so all of these characters are gonna come randomly to the Discord server. And so since users never know when they are coming, it creates this suspense and this anticipation on when they are gonna be able to interact with these characters. But also, since all these new characters have a different ways to be unlocked, and people do not know what these characters are gonna do, what they are gonna offer, what kind of reward they are gonna offer, it also creates this anticipation that makes you want to interact, that makes you want to engage in the server to be able to unlock these characters and to see what they are gonna do. The third element, which was random rewards, is something that we really implemented with the first of these characters, which is K, which whenever it comes to the Discord server, it basically offers 3 items. Only 3 items that people can purchase with their currency, with the time that they have. And these 3 items are always different. They can be physical decks, they can be some tiny plushies, and so whenever this character comes in, you never know what kind of reward you could get. So that really touches on this psychological element. And finally, the fourth one is natural breaks, which also goes really well with the way that we use these characters, in the sense that since they are not here all the time, and since they come randomly to the Discord server, I might add without pinging people, meaning that when they arrive in the Discord server, unless you are here to witness them, you don't know that they are arriving. It's not gonna give you a notification, which is a bit sneaky, but it kind of makes it so you want to come to the server fairly often in order to see if this character is coming. And so this really simple idea to have these characters that randomly come and to have people being able to earn currency and to buy stuff from these characters, this simple idea really touches on all these 4 different psychological elements that are used in many media and video games to keep people engaged. So I feel like for us it's something that works really well for Mind Worlds. But if you've created a tiny game of your own, or if you have a Discord server where you're slowly trying to build a micro community, it's probably gonna be something else that might work best for you. But I feel like as long as you keep in mind these main elements, these main psychological things that most people crave, which is first the feeling of progression, second, to have some suspense and anticipation for people to not being able to know what's gonna happen, third, to have some kind of random rewards, to not have a set of predetermined things that can happen and that people can get, but for it to have some element of randomness, and finally to have natural breaks. So as long as you keep these 4 elements in mind, you can probably add a few others to that, but I feel like these 4 elements are probably the simplest ones and the ones that go the best together. And since it's meant for micro communities and for really creating the seeds of a player pool for your tiny game, as long as you keep these elements in mind, whatever you create should allow you to create some kind of engaging experience for your players. So, as a conclusion, I'm basically gonna give you the 3 questions that you might want to answer to create this kind of dynamic where people want to come back to your Discord and people want to engage with your game or any other tiny projects that you have. So the first question to answer is, what do you want? What do you want players to do in this Discord? Do you want them to talk? Do you want them to create fan arts? Do you want them to play the game? Do you want them to create a lot of memes? What do you want from them? What do you want people to do among this tiny community? The second question is, what do people want? What do they want from this experience? So here it's mainly these psychological elements, which are things that most people want, which is thing that is kind of anchored in our brain. But depending on the game that you're creating and depending on kind of the experience that you want to create, it's gonna be slightly different. For this, we created this character and this currency because it really fits with the lore of the game, but depending on what you're creating, it's probably gonna be something really different that people want. There's still gonna be these main psychological elements, but you probably want to use them in a slightly different way. And finally, the last question that you want to answer is how to connect them. How to connect what you want with what people want, what the first players of your game want. So, 3 questions. What do you want? What do people want? And how to connect them both. So I hope this tiny video was somewhat entertaining, somewhat helpful. And if you're already in the Mind World's Discord server, I hope you're gonna be intrigued and engaged by these new characters that are coming. And otherwise you can join the Discord, it's in the description. And yeah, have a nice day.